Hey everyone, the aim of this video is to make drums using mainly drum samples. So let's get right into it. So what I've got here is a bunch of sounds that I can play about with, try and build a little groove, kind of have fun with it, seeing what grooves we can create. I've got to be honest, I love the character of this drum with this weird air on the end like this. It's very cool. The kick drum itself is a bit long for me. The attack is low and then the body gets really high by the midpoint. So I've found personally when you play these on really big speakers, that it feels like your kick, instead of being like a really nice thud, it goes like do it, whoom, and there's a gap between the attack and the body. We'll have to try and fix this up somehow. But first of all, I think this kick is just too long. So with the filter, I'm just going to do a high pass. Really, a kick should only be lasting a pretty short amount of time. So a lot of this needs to kind of go back. Now if I duplicate that and just print it, you can see that instead of the sub lasting for a really long time, it's almost done by a 1/16th note here. So that's pretty cool. It's a bit tighter because you only want that kick to be pretty short in my opinion, otherwise it just tends to get a bit overwhelming. Just going to try and shape up that sub a little bit. Now we've put that enveloper on it, if I just bounce that again, you can see instead of having a small attack and then larger body, now it's got slightly more consistent overall level. So hopefully that won't have that pumping sound, but it feels like it needs to kind of hit more at the beginning. Oof, that's pretty cool now, but it can't have those two competing low ends. So they interfere at the beginning with each other, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm just going to check if you flip the phase, does it improve the sound? We get a much tighter attack, which is quite cool. Let's see if I can take out a bit of low end of this one. I'll just show you what I'm looking at here. So here's what I'm trying to get right, is to have like a nice bit of attack there, but also at the same time, I don't want it to clip here in a bit. I want to control that as well. So I'm just looking at all those things and trying to get a nice attack, nice character, nice body, and seeing if I can use the phase of these sounds by moving them like left or right just a little bit to improve that sound overall. And sometimes you can, so sometimes you can make that attack a little bit tighter. But now we've got too much here, so they're impacting each other with the body of the sound. So that's something I'm going to keep looking at and keep developing really. So now what I've got is the attack of this one. They're working together. We're starting to get a bit more transient, which is good. I love that kick. Yeah, this is good, but of course it's making everything clip. So on my master now, the reason it sounds really good is because it's just clipped like crazy. So I want to get that kind of feeling, but without having to clip it a huge amount. So yeah, that's all pretty good to me. I want to have a filter as well, so that that wobbly low end stays there, but not with like loads of low the whole time. That's that, see if that works. Yeah, that's better. That gives you a better indication of what that one's providing to the kick drum now. It's just a bit of attack and then comes out for the middle while this one gets big, and then comes out again at the end to give a bit more air and like flavour, which is cool. And in this one, I don't want the low end to kind of keep contributing the whole time. Yeah, that gives just a little bit of extra dirtiness, something like that. So what you can see here is both these kicks, they're big at the attack to make up for the lack of attack here. Then they both duck down for when this kick is big, so that ducks down, that ducks out of the way for that bit. And then they both come out to contribute to this kind of airy tail. So the kick's long, but when it gets to this tail bit, it's only top end because it's been filtered for each of these by this point. So the bass only lasts for this little point. Strong attack, strong body, strong tail. That's going to be a pretty great kick drum, I reckon. You know, not perfect, but it's a good starting point. Check out mattchapmanaudio.com for mixing and mastering, one-to-one music production blogs, and exclusive content in the store. That's mattchapmanaudio.com. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Just get the layers right first and get some character in there is my kind of go-to. That's kind of the snare I'm looking for. And I can imagine like a boom, kaboom. That's quite nice. But because this is the main snare and this is just going to be like a characterful layer, it would be cool. When this one comes in, I don't want it to interfere with that attack, so I might just pull that away a little bit so that this one can come in first, and then this will just contribute like a cool tail element to it underneath. Just a little bit more room for that attack. That won't happen every time, but it'd just be nice to have an edit. And same again, just always watching out so I'm not doubling up the transients, making it clip and stuff like that. Okay, this snare's nice, but I'm really hearing it not changing or moving. So one thing I like to do is on each one, use something to get it to move and change. As it's playing, I'm just going to adjust the fine tune here for each snare. Now what I should have is each individual snare here has got just a tiny bit different pitch by a cent, and what I like to do is build up layers of variation, because it really kind of bugs me when I can hear like, oh, that's just one snare repeated over and over. It's super subtle, but it is changing definitely. I'm going to do the same with shaper boxes and just add little different things to each snare. And so little bits of hats come in and out, and it just changes the hat again every bar. So it might have more hat or less hat, and then I'll just do a couple of other little effects just to keep it changing the whole time. Maybe an enveloper, why not? I'll just record a little bit of movement with this. If you can see, it's very, very subtle, but this has got like different dynamics now, different amount of attack, slightly different pitch, and it will feel like a drummer's played it, you know, because each time the attack would be a little bit different, each time it would change. And yeah, that's probably all I'll do to keep that snare varied. That's pretty great. So these are the extra snare layers. And what's cool about these is now you can see that they don't have much attack to make room for my main snare, but they just give it like kind of some tail. There's something higher that I'm not liking on this. I think I want to filter. So I'm just going to use shaper box just to roll a bit of the top off on the tail. Yeah, that sounds a bit smoother on the top. So I'll do a little before and after. So this is before. I think it's got a bit more of a consistent tone, which is a little bit better, and not some bright like sharpness in the tops. So when I want to EQ like brightness into the whole snare group in a moment, I'm not dealing with one thing causing a load of problems. So I'm happy enough with these snares that I think I'll bounce these three. But now I might give this snare just a touch of brightness. Cool. Start getting some hats in now. This one feels like it might be good for being a quick hat on 16th. I've got to be honest, I don't like its kind of metallic-iness that it's got to it. But I think it could be a good one to play about with. Maybe it could act as a trigger for a hat that I do like. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I didn't use that hat in the end at all, but it did work as a trigger for this. That's pretty good. And what I also like about using that technique is, if you can see, there's always variation, because it was just a big long burst of noise from shaper box. Now, instead of just being one consistent hat, it's always moving, so each hit is slightly different from the last. Another thing that I like to do is load in some AM distortion. So this is just a volume up and down on a sine wave. It's going up and down really quick. So that's where it's being distorted. That's the original. And what I like to do is automate when this comes in for each kick and snare. It feels like there's a crush happen, like when the kick's in. So that drops in, making it feel crushed. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that now. We're getting somewhere now, I feel like, at least. Do you know what? I like that. I'm going to bounce that one down. It seems pretty cool. And then these would be the hats. I'm pretty certain I'm happy with all of this. So now I've got a nice hat pattern, kick snare. And when I need it, I've got that extra hat to come in. Even though there's a lot of layers in there, I've been keeping an eye on my master clipper, and you can see it just barely clips. And so now I just clip the drums before they hit the master, but just by maybe half a dB. So I'm happy enough with that to roll on. He's doing a little parallel. We can make one now, that'd be good to hear. So one setting I love for the parallel is optical. And I'll have a slower attack, maybe somewhere in the region of 30 milliseconds, instant release. Big threshold. So I'm just using the sidechain EQ to make sure that each transient gets about the same amount of punch and pump. I'm basically creating a really transient-y sort of layer. Let's get an audio track and try and print that. That's pretty great. And now I just have to line this up so that it hits perfectly. Yeah, I think that's as good as that's going to get. But of course now this will cause my drum group to clip a whole bunch because I've added a huge transient, but this can just be layered in, maybe like that. And if I need it later, like say the mix, like the drums don't cut through or something's up, I can just use this. So this is without it. With. Hopefully you can hear the transients a little bit stronger, just drums come forward a little bit. And yeah, that's kind of how I go about making some drums from audio files. Whereas now is the time where I feel like I want to go in and give them character and something that makes you feel like, whoa, these are Matt's drums, you know, Reckless drums or whatever. So one thing I can think about is adding some samples from a vocal, like splice. So it really doesn't matter what the vocal is. All I'm looking for is a little tiny piece. And one trick that I've got for this is I'll cut the bit that I want. I'll do all the fades so I don't want any attack coming in and I want it to be out by about there. But then with holding shift and option, I can just drag the audio inside of the region. The bits of the vocal that I really like, I'm just going to layer that under. But now I don't have to have the same one, it can change. Let's try that now. But basically, you've got unlimited snares. And each one gives me just a little tiny different flavour, and I can keep going. And then I've now got variation. Every snare is different inside of this loop, and this one's responding to the other hits. So even though the drums are single hits, they feel like they're moving and changing the whole time, which is quite cool. And I'm just trying to build in that feeling of it moving, you know. So yeah, and I'll just add a few more layers like that. Right, let's see what this is. So the first thing I'm going to do for this one is just add a bit of like quarter note movement to it. Once again, I'm going to do shaper box with the AM distortion to move to the kick and snares, just to feel like it's not just random sound, it's actually, it's like complementing the other stuff and moving with it. So when the kick's in, we'll have that in. That's pretty cool. Kind of does a distorted hi-hat clicky layer. I'll turn it up a bit. Yeah, we're starting to get somewhere with that. Okay. But it's quite a cool little noisy layer. All right, that's good. Check out mattchapmanaudio.com for mixing and mastering, one-to-one music production blogs, and exclusive content in the store. That's mattchapmanaudio.com. that bit is exactly the type of thing that I'm looking for. Just by accident, this weird little clip bit created a offbeat groove thing. So I'm just going to try and highlight that and bring that in. So we're still doing good. I'm only clipping my drums just a tiny bit. But now we're starting to get that little bit of character to the drums. So this is pretty close because I like to have it really interesting over a 16. But I might also do breakbeat edits. So get like a classic break and layer that in. And that is going to be like the main drums just for one bar. So in this bar, like obviously my parallel can come out for a second. And whatever pattern I had can go. And I'm just going to have their main pattern. Yeah, grimy. And a little bit of this kickback maybe. So yeah, this is starting to be pretty cool. The only thing I think I'm missing now is a sense of like ambience. So let me send this out to the verb. And then I'm not going to do full send on this, maybe like -6. So if I need a bit more later, I've got it. And then I'm going to adjust the gain here. That's about as much verb as I'll put on. The thing is, it only needs to just be air. So this is all it's doing. Very delicate, but it just adds a sense of space and a little bit more character again. Okay, cool, yeah. So pretty much that's how I'd approach making drums with one shots. I'll put this breakbeat in my sample pack for April. So if you want to download that, it should be on my website. And if you want to do like one-to-one music production tutorials with me, you can hit me up on my website, mattchapmanaudio.com. We can go through making drums with synthesizers or samples, or you know, if you want me to listen to your drums to give you feedback about how you could improve them, we can do that. If you're interested in me mixing and mastering your tunes, I'm also a mixing and mastering engineer, so you can hit me up on my website again for those services. And I hope this gave you some tips, some ideas, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. Until next time, nice one.